Some time ago, I had the pleasure of visiting the sublime palaces and gardens of the Alhambra in Granada, southern Spain, where I now have family. My daughter's partner, born and raised in the city, spent the morning with us, introducing us to the wonder he loves and knows by heart, and later, after returning home, I continued my explorations in order to create a presentation. Yet somehow in the telling, I overlooked what has always been for him a particularly cherished element of the story, concerning the way in which this great fortress fell from Moorish hands. So I want to take a moment to put things straight, as it were, and to tell this beautiful part of the story as it was meant to be told. The legend tells that in order to preserve the wonders of the Alhambra, in order that they might not be destroyed in a final act of vengeance, as we so often see as the vanquished are driven from their previous strongholds, in order that, and in the hope that even under different rule, this great beauty might not be despoiled, but instead might live on. Boabdil, the final sultan of Moorish Spain, simply walked away, and as he left his beloved city and its peoples, he is reputed to have said to the incoming Spanish royalty, "These are the keys to paradise." He then led his entourage high up over the Sierra Nevada mountains, and from there he is said to have taken one last longing, lingering look behind, before turning on his heels, and with tears streaming down his face, walked away, never to return. It had been his hope that those of his faith that were left behind would be treated in the same way as Jews and Christians had under Islamic rule. The latter had endured certain restrictions, of course, especially after the 1100s, but had enjoyed considerable freedoms too, and had been permitted to maintain their religious institutions. Yet these were the days of Spanish emboldenment, and the incoming royalty had very different ideas and an agenda that was to shake the soul of the city to its core. It was the year of 1492, the year Columbus had set sail for the New World. The Spanish were in conquering mood, with sword in one hand and a Bible in the other, emboldened after their triumphant repossession of the Iberian Peninsula after 800 years of Islamic rule, the crowning glory being the reconquest of Granada and the taking of the exquisite Alhambra. Ferdinand and Isabella, the Catholic king and queen, who then took up residence, were ruthless in their crackdown upon Muslims and Jews in the city. Any agreement the outgoing sultan had brokered on behalf of his people was totally disregarded and abandoned. Instead, Granada, where once upon a time Christians, Muslims and Jews had lived and worked alongside one another, now became the place where the merciless Spanish Inquisition set up its headquarters, and where, under its auspices, thousands were forced to renounce their faiths and to convert to Christianity or else be driven from the city. The history, myths and legends surrounding the last Muslim ruler in Spain, whose surrender ended 7 centuries of Islam at the heart of Western Europe, is the subject of a new book by Cambridge academic Elizabeth Drayson, The Moor's Last Stand, The Life of Boabdil, Muslim King of Granada. According to her, Boabdil's heroism, long repudiated by most historical commentators, is evident in his ability to recognize the futility of further resistance and the choice he made in rejecting the further suffering, starvation and slaughter of his people. Instead, he bargained for the best terms of surrender possible, rejecting martyrdom and willingly sacrificing his reputation for the greater good. The loss of Granada, she writes, is viewed by modern writers as a prelude to the repression of the Muslim world. At a time when Europe is seeking a way of addressing issues of racial and religious intolerance, equality and freedom, we might very well look closely at the Spanish Muslim society of which Boabdil was the final heir, which successfully tackled some of these problems. Boabdil represents a last stand against religious intolerance, fanatical power, and cultural ignorance. His surrender of the city and the kingdom of Granada symbolized the loss of the fertile, cross-cultural creativity, renewal, and coexistence born out of the Muslim conquest of Spain. The fall marked the end of the golden age of Islamic learning and refinement, which had embodied and held sacred much of the wisdom of classical Greece and Rome, and in so doing brought a level of civilization to Europe commensurate with that of the Italian Renaissance. Today, there are hardly any Jews or Muslims in Granada and in the old town of Albayzin, where my new family live. Yet the magnificent palaces of the Alhambra still stand, proudly overlooking the city, as if nothing has changed. And in the evenings, as the sun sets over the mountains, one can imagine the call to prayer echoing through the narrow, white-clad streets, harmonizing with the sweet chimes of church bells and the murmur of Jewish evening prayer.